So there's an old saying in writing, drama equals conflict. But what is conflict? In a previous video, I talked about how conflict is more than just one person holding a weapon to another person's chest. If it was as simple as that, then movies like Transformers or Resident Evil Aftermath would be the most dramatic movies, nay, works of cinema of all time. Non-stop conflict, non-stop drama, right? No, of course it isn't that simple. Conflict is when two people want something but only one can get it. This could be as large scale as wanting to escape captivity, or as small scale as protect your garbage from a raccoon. Stage a conflict between two characters who want clearly defined goals in direct opposition of each other, then watch the drama unfold as we see just how far those characters are willing to go to achieve said goal. Conflict's one of those things where once you notice it in movies, shows, books, or video games, well, the good ones at least, you can't stop seeing it in almost every single scene, because a good conflict makes every scene instantly more dramatic. That's why when one character comes into a place of business to ask for something, they're usually met with a disgruntled employee who hates their job and doesn't want any part in helping that person get what they want.
Some days, we don't let the line move at all. We call those weekdays.
Take Men in Black, for example. There's Edgar, a giant space bug disguised in the rotting skin of a farmer who wants to get into a morgue to find a pet cat belonging to a dead body with an alien living inside its head, and David Cross, a receptionist at the morgue. Edgar wants to get into the morgue. David Cross doesn't want to let him get into the morgue. Conflict. The drama is watching Edgar try to lie his way in, while David Cross, thoroughly unimpressed, continues to squash bugs with his fly swatter, which is an act of homicide to the big bad bug Edgar. The conflict then changes from get into the morgue to stop killing bugs.
Don't do that.
Do what?
Don't do it.
David Cross then escalates things when he sees Edgar's just full of them, and that's another key thing here, escalation. This is where we get to see just how far a character's willing to go to win. When a fly swatter won't cut it, break out the dual bug spray cans. Ideally, each scene should be a miniature drama. Opposite goals starts the drama. Escalation increases the drama. Victory or defeat completes the drama. Edgar wins, by the way. If a scene is two or more people who are in complete agreement about where to go next, what to eat for lunch, if we should save the world or not, or how to pull off a heist,
You son of a bitch! I'm in!
then it's probably boring and it should have been edited out. On the other end of the spectrum, if the scene is just two people mad at each other for entirely arbitrary reasons and not because they have clear goals to achieve, re a lot of what's on Netflix these days, then the scene pretty much devolves into
Loud noises!
Alright, so I was watching New Girl the other day, and there's this particular episode that I want to go over in detail, as I think it's a perfect example of how to create drama from conflict, how far characters are willing to go to win, what they do once they've won or lost, and how their tactics change over the course of a conflict. I'm also going to touch on story circles a bit, because this episode's a good example of that as well. Okay, so for those who've never watched New Girl, let me give a brief rundown of the relationships at play in this episode. First, if you haven't watched New Girl, yeah, what are you doing with your life? Go watch it. I'll be right here when you get back. All those cutesy little sayings that YouTubers do. No, you know what? Don't go watch it. Don't you dare click away from my video, not even for a second. You just sit right there in your chair, or my boy Ed209 will have some words with you.
You have 20 seconds to comply.
I think you'd better do what he says, Mr. Kenny.
First up, there's Jessica Day, the titular new girl, who's had a bad breakup with her boyfriend at the start of the first episode and needs to move out ASAP. Jess is really awkward and probably should have been born in the 1930s.
You are hot, hot, hot.
Thank you.
Hello, weather service. Oh, there's a heat wave from Portsmouth to Port Kansas.
Her new roommates are Schmidt, Coach, and Nick Miller, aka my spirit animal, a bartender from Chicago who hates everyone and everything.
No, can't do this.
And dreams of being a writer even though he hardly ever works towards achieving it. I feel you, man. Schmidt is an overachieving, hyperactive, hypercritical neat freak.
I will cal-cut a bitch up in here. I will cal-cut a bitch.
And there's Coach, who, you know, we're not even going to talk about Coach because he leaves after the first episode due to Damon Wayans Jr.'s previous engagement at the show Happy Endings getting picked up for a second season. Happy Endings is, it's bad. It's really bad. It's New Girl if it wasn't funny or endearing or felt way more forced or...
Get on with it.
But we're not here to talk about happy endings. Coach is replaced by Winston Bishop, a former professional basketball player in Latvia and all-around weirdo. Winston's often the third wheel in the show with storylines completely separate from the rest of the group, despite Lamorne Morris being just so goddamn hilarious.
Look how good I look. Look how stylish I look.
It's not sexy. I feel like I'm getting a speeding ticket.
Woo! Shelby, you made me so mad. My mustache is coming
Why do
off.
you have a mustache glued on top of your mustache?
And finally, there's Cece, Jessica's best friend since childhood and professional model, who Schmidt has a major crush on.
Did you see that cleavage? I just want to get my arm stuck down there, like 127-hour style, and then.
Most of their season-long storylines revolve around a will they, won't they dynamic. They will, they won't, they will again, they won't again. They're Rachel and Ross. Nick and Schmidt went to college together, Nick and Winston grew up together, now you know everything there is to know. See, you didn't have to click away. Stand down, Ed. But seriously, New Girl is one of the funniest shows out there, or the first 3 seasons are anyway. Post-season 3, it's still a good time, but a lot of the major storylines have played themselves out. Almost everyone has either dated or wanted to date Cece by this point, and it's hard not to feel like the show's spinning its wheels. But those first 3 seasons, season 2 especially, is peak TV, and I'd put it up there with any of the other major comedies in the last few decades, except for the Olivia Munn episodes. It's not that I don't like Olivia Munn, it's just that her character created this weird dynamic that...
Get over there!
But we're not here to talk about Olivia Munn. So without further ado, let's go over Season 1, Episode 16, titled Control, and examine how it handles conflict.
Gabby J!
Yay!
The episode opens with Jess placing a hutch she found off the street in the loft. Schmidt says no.
Get rid of it, Jess. Pine has no place in this loft. It's the wood of poor people and outhouses.
Conflict. Jess counters that because she pays rent, she should be able to add a few things to the loft. Schmidt doubles down by saying no more forcefully.
My answer is no.
Well, my answer is yes. I'm keeping the hutch.
Schmidt then appeals to her sympathy, saying he had a bad night and asks her to let it go, but also follows that up with a threat.
Because I'll have to reinstate my ban on high-waisted shorts.
You would not dare.
Try me.
That was the worst 4 weeks of my life.
Cut to the opening theme song. Schmidt's line about the ban establishes 2 things: that Schmidt has the power to instate a ban on Jess's clothes, and that Jess has obeyed said ban in the past. Schmidt seemingly has an unfair upper hand in this dynamic, or as Jess says in a separate scene,
It's a broken ecosystem dominated by an apex predator.
later that day, Schmidt comes home to find that Jess not only kept the hutch, but added even more items she found off the street. Conflict. There's a quick series of escalations as Schmidt discovers more and more of their stuff mixed together until Schmidt just can't take it anymore.
Hutch is gone.
No.
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 Hutch.
But Jess doesn't back down. This is probably the most resistance Schmidt has ever faced to his tyrannical rule over the loft, since Nick and Winston are so go-along-get-along.
Chill out, Jess. We let him run the house. No big deal. The boy cooks and cleans, and happily, I might add.
Crashing against a brick wall that is Jessica Day, Schmidt breaks off, apologizes, and says she can keep the hutch. Jess wins! Or does she? Schmidt then escalates things about as far as they can go and destroys the hutch. Schmidt wins because he was willing to escalate things further than Jess, right? Well, not exactly. You see, the episode actually opens with a different plot thread, the C plot between Cece and Schmidt, who just started sleeping together. Cece, being a cool model, is embarrassed to be seen with Schmidt because he's, well, I mean he's Schmidt.
I am having sex with this woman right here. You want to stand up? Okay, you don't want to? All right, great. Parkour!
And so she wants to drop him off a mile away from the loft in a questionable neighborhood. Questionable for Schmidt anyway. It doesn't look as bad as some of the places I've lived in. Schmidt complains that Cece has all the power in this relationship, that he has no control. Cece tells Schmidt to relax. Now we're getting to the real heart of the matter here. This was never about the hutch. This was about Schmidt needing to relax, and this has been implanted in the back of his brain thanks to the C plot with Cece. Now, let's return to the conflict over the hutch. Schmidt smashes the hutch, but you can see on his face that he knows he took things too far. Jess comes back in and tells Schmidt he has a problem, and Schmidt agrees, when a minute ago he probably wouldn't have. Jess pushed him to this moment of self-reflection, which means, that's right,
The winner is
Now, these aren't galaxy-brained insights into the inner workings of these characters. Anyone watching this show is going to be able to understand what's going on. But that's also my point. In less than 6 minutes, this episode has established the players, their motivations, the flaw one particular person needs to get over, and since it's network television, repeats the flaw a few times in case anyone tuned in later.
You really need to learn to take a breath and calm down.
He's got to learn how to relax. You have a real problem. You've got to learn to calm down.
Yeah.
It's honestly pretty incredible, and a main component of why New Girl is so compulsively watchable. The first 3 seasons anyway. For example, they bring back Sam in season 5, who's great, but him and Jess have like the exact same story arc as season 2.
Get on with it!
Moving on, Jess takes Schmidt to the beach to help him get past his control issues, but Schmidt can't get past how filthy everything is and wants to leave. Conflict. Following a little montage of Jess trying different ways to get through to Schmidt, they now sit on a bench where Jess tells Schmidt,
You are legitimately crazy.
I think we're all a little bit crazy, don't you think, Jess?
No, I mean, you're like aging ballerina, child chess prodigy, professional magician crazy.
Schmidt tries to counter by delving into his childhood, blaming the way he is on his overbearing Jewish mother, only finding control through what he ate, which is why he was fat for most of his life. Jess, though, immediately diffuses this by telling her own story of why she was fat as a kid.
Yeah, I got fat because I used to eat Concord grape jelly from the jar using a candy bar as a fork.
Which is a subtle way of telling Schmidt he's not the only one with childhood issues, only Jess doesn't let hers control her future. Schmidt becomes more aggressive, though, telling Jess that she had no structure as a child, no rules, and he can't be that kind of person.
That's what happens when you don't have any rules.
None of these people have rules, especially that guy. He's wearing ladies' bikini bottoms.
Jess finally calls Schmidt on his bullshit, saying he's just making excuses for himself, and leaves to return their roller skates. Then a nearby drum circle draws Schmidt's attention where a dirty hippie girl, not my words, beckons him over, but Schmidt waves her off. Aww. Shit, looks like we got ourselves another conflict. In this undercard, it's between Schmidt, who wants to stay on the beach, and the dirty hippie girl who wants him to join the circle. Now, this conflict's over lightning quick as Schmidt gets up and starts to, dance, but just having that little tiny bit of friction makes this scene more interesting. Schmidt could have easily just seen the drum circle and dove right in, but no, he doesn't want to at first, but is pulled over by the irresistible siren call of tambourines and patchouli oil. Do the kids these days even know what patchouli oil is? I'm getting old. Schmidt and Jess return home to tell Nick and Winston about how Schmidt's finally let go.
Washed his hands in a public restroom.
And there was a man in there. And he was using the toilet. Full sit, no door, and I didn't break eye contact. Not once.
Nick does a spit take on the counter and Schmidt immediately goes to clean it up, but Jess tells him to leave it. Mini conflict. Schmidt says but there's a spill, and Jess tells Schmidt to remember his exercises. Schmidt then takes a deep breath, counts to 10, and is able to relax. A miniature conflict like this and the dirty hippie girl adds a bit of spice to the scene, but also visually demonstrates how far a character has come.
I'm gonna go take a shower with Nick's bar soap, like a common ranch hand.
Remember, show, don't tell. Jess could just tell the others and the audience that Schmidt is now able to relax, which they do, but it's better to take the extra step and show it. And it's even more better, to demonstrate it through conflict. Nick and Winston warn Jess that she's messed with the ecosystem.
And you guys said it couldn't be done.
You have no idea what you're getting into.
Which brings us to the halfway point. Jess may have won her conflict with Schmidt, but what exactly did she win? The next morning, Jess is horrified that the loft is a complete disaster as Nick and Winston bicker like a couple of children and Schmidt drums incessantly in the background. They're in my own personal circle of hell, the one with bad coffee. Ugh. Later that night, Jess finds Schmidt back at the beach, eating street meat wrapped in street meat.
You've outdone yourself once again, Gordon.
Jess wants Schmidt to return to his old self. Schmidt wants to stay. Conflict. Jess tries several tactics, first by saying how bad off the rest of them are without him. When that doesn't work, she tries to remind him how tight-laced he really is.
Do you remember when you said jazz music was America's greatest mistake?
Say it in drums, Jessica Day.
But what this scene is really about is that Schmidt felt taken advantage of by the rest of the loft.
Please come home.
Why? So I can cook and clean?
Jess is unable to convince Schmidt that this is about more than just cooking and cleaning, and so Jess returns to the loft, defeated, where she reveals to Nick and Winston the real reason she wanted to hutch in the loft. But before we get there, let's first talk about why Nick and Winston are holding half a frozen waffle to their faces. And to do that, we're gonna have to go over this episode's B plot, Nick and Winston. After Jess and Schmidt's first conflict over the hutch, Winston and Nick recover after a hard night of drinking and playing poker where Nick got blackout drunk and bet a lot of money that he now owes Winston.
So what do I owe you, 20 bucks?
20 bucks?
Yeah.
You owe me $487.
Come on.
Jess then comes in to complain about Schmidt's control issues, putting Nick and Winston's conflict on hold, but now we know the terms of the conflict to come. Winston wants his money, Nick doesn't want to pay what he owes. Conflict. Later, Nick and Winston sit on a park bench eating a lunch Winston paid for.
Which is weird because I clearly remember saying, hey man, don't forget your wallet.
And then I still forgot it.
This illustrates two things. One, just how often Nick doesn't pay for things, and two, how normalized that is in his relationship with Winston. This is underscored even further when Winston takes out a speech he wrote to confront Nick about the money. Nick immediately tries to downplay it as not serious, telling Winston to relax.
If I am reading this section, then I can only assume you have told me to relax.
It's crystal clear by now that Nick has owed Winston money in the past multiple times over and never makes good on it, which is why Winston has come out so strong. Then, Winston offers Nick a lifeline.
I am willing to just call it an even $200.
$200, 200 clean?
Yep.
All right.
Winston wins! Or does he? Nick immediately starts to whittle the debt down, saying he paid for gas to the park, for the pay-per-view fights on Friday, and for beer, bringing the debt even lower, now at $140 and still falling. This nickel and diming pisses Winston off, who then walks away, disappointed and knowing he'll probably never get the money. Next, Nick day drinks in the kitchen, which Winston uses for his next tactic: shame.
Look, man, I'm sorry to bother you while you're clearly sitting here working hard, making lots of money.
Winston then tries to shame Nick further by pulling out old receipts from times when he loaned Nick money, which Nick never paid.
A $15 receipt for a Chinatown box turtle. Bam,
Wow.
there we go.
We're doing this, huh?
Yeah, we are doing this.
But Winston forgot one key element here. Nick Miller cannot be shamed. The conflict continues to reach further and further into their collective past, from Winston helping Nick get over past breakups to when Winston once saw Nick's mom naked in the 8th grade.
So how much is that in terms of money? Because I haven't gotten over that.
That's when Schmidt and Jess come in to tell them the good news about Schmidt being able to let go. The next morning, Jess offers to clean the disastrous loft if Nick and Winston will go grocery shopping. This is another mini conflict, a second undercard bout, as they refuse to go shopping until...
I made you necklaces.
Hey, do you want to go to the store?
Please, God, yes.
At the grocery store, Nick and Winston, clearly out of their element, continue to bicker with each other over the money. Their fight becomes more and more childish until Nick uses a nickname he knows Winston hates.
Oh, Winnie, your little trick foot.
Yeah, my trick foot. And don't ever call me Winnie.
Oh, Winnie.
Winston then uses the bait and switch tactic of admitting defeat until he switches it back up.
You don't owe me anything. The slate is clean. We're good. We're even.
Oh, good. That's how I feel, too.
Because in my mind, your mom will always be the winner of best boobs.
The fight then devolves into full-on toddler mode, from shoving all the way up to slapping. Nick even shouts out,
Grow up, dude!
"Now, what does this look like to you besides, you know, two grown-ass men having a slap fight at the checkout aisle? They look like brothers, right?" Remember that Nick and Winston grew up together. They've known each other since they were little kids. Later episodes even reveal that Winston calls Nick's dad Pop Pop.
But that's a
Just
nickname
call-
that I
Yeah,
give
but it's
him.
really weird that you call my dad Pop Pop.
I like Pop.
You don't get it.
Yeah,
You don't get
fine. Just don't call him Pop Pop.
And this episode's conflict has taken these two back through their shared history, from the most recent poker night to past debts, all the way back to 8th grade. We're on a guided tour of Nick and Winston's brotherhood, which probably has had a lot of fights like this along the way, fights which they always get past, and they'll get past this one too, as Nick offers Winston half of a frozen waffle to help nurse their wounds. So now we've caught back up to when Jess returns to the loft, defeated, unable to convince Schmidt to return, where she reveals the real reason why she wanted to keep the hutch.
Just want to put my hutch here. Make the place my own, be a part of the family.
What family? With these clowns?
Yeah, you clown.
And there it is. The A plot of Jess and Schmidt fighting over a hutch now becomes intertwined with the B plot of Nick and Winston bickering like brothers. The hutch was never a hutch, the debt was never a debt. It was all about becoming a family, which is the final tactic the gang will take when Schmidt returns home and they stage an intervention.
So I'm not cool?
Schmidt comes right out with what's bothering him.
You just want me to clean.
No, that's not true.
Well, it's a little bit true. I mean, there's truth
Okay,
to
look.
that.
Jess says that Schmidt's just running away from his problems, but that new problems will pop up, which calls back to both Schmidt's germophobia and the hypodermic needle that was on the beach. What she's really trying to do is re-trigger his prior, much more germ-alert self, but when that doesn't work, she has Nick open up to Schmidt.
I need you to tell me what pants not to wear and to exercise more often. I need you to make fun of me when I call a panini a hot sandwich.
Then, Winston reiterates the heart of this episode because, again, this is network television and you have to repeat things after commercial breaks. That's just how it works.
Without you, man, we're just three idiots who live together. You make us a family.
This finally slips past Schmidt's guard, who, being a single child with an absent father, smiles at the idea of being a family. But remember, conflict is also about escalation. Who's willing to go the furthest in order to get what they want? Nick then puts it all on the line, goes further than he's ever gone before in one last desperate attempt to get Schmidt to revert to his old ways by making an offer Schmidt cannot refuse.
Look, Schmidt, if you come back to us, I'll let you clean my room.
The white whale?
Think about how many dust bunnies are under my bed. How many stray socks?
This flattens Schmidt out in the center of the squared circle. On the mat, exhausted, in comes Jess with an elbow drop off the top rope. Schmidt can no longer put up a fight. Pinned down, 3 count, it's over. The gang wins! The next morning, the gang wakes up to a spotless loft as Schmidt cooks them breakfast, criticizing each in turn for their minor flaws. But this makes the gang happy. The ecosystem has been restored, but it's not really an ecosystem anymore, is it? It's a family. So, who really won all these conflicts? Well, if we're being honest, the answer is nobody. Nobody won, right? Jess convinced Schmidt to let go, only to regret it, and Schmidt ends up right back where he started. Nick and Winston fight over the money, they reconnect over a frozen waffle, but the debt never gets settled, does it? Everything ends up back at the status quo, and that's because of story circles. Popularized by the creator behind Community and Rick and Morty, Dan Harmon's story circles is an effective method of storytelling specifically for serialized television and really probably for video games, although I haven't put enough thought into that yet. A story circle is an 8-step outline that goes like this. A character is in a zone of comfort, but they want something. They enter an unfamiliar situation, adapt to it, get what they want, pay a heavy price for it, then return to their familiar situation having changed. And you see all of this at work in the episode of New Girl. Schmidt's comfortable being the apex predator of a broken ecosystem. Jess wants him to change so she can put up a hutch. They go to the beach, which is very uncomfortable for Schmidt. Schmidt adapts. Jess gets what she wants, but the loft becomes a disaster. So the gang convinces Schmidt to go back to his old ways, which he does, but now the gang is a family. So really, in a sense, they've all won the conflict. You might think this is an overly simplistic way of writing stories, but one, it's anything but. You try writing a 21-page script for TV that somebody actually wants to sit down and watch, that shit is hard. And 2, notice how every beat of the story circle is centered around the characters and what they want. This makes the story character-focused, not event-focused like the hero's journey or any number of screenwriting how-tos tell you where scene X has to happen by page Y. Not to mention that the non-stop conflicts between Jess and Schmidt, Nick and Winston, Jess and Nick and Winston, Schmidt and Dirty Hippie Girl make everything feel propulsive. You can't wait to see what happens next, all the way up to the heartwarming moment where these clowns become a family. It's great. It's a great episode of television, and I think breaking down scripts like this is a very good exercise for aspiring writers who want to figure out the nuts and bolts of how good storytelling works. Finally, we return to the bookend of the episode, where Cece sneaks into Schmidt's bed, which, if you remember, she first refused to go within a mile of to avoid being seen. A symbolic victory of Schmidt's learning to let go, even if only a little, which also helps move their story into the next phase as they get closer and closer to being a couple in the full light of day. Good seasons of television do this. They use story circles to make the characters grow, if only a little, come back to the status quo, but also move a season-long story arc forward just a little bit until it culminates in the last episodes of the season. Alright, so what are the takeaways here? 1. Conflicts. If you're ever writing a scene and it feels flat, the characters aren't just grabbing the reins and leaping off the page. Re-examine the scene and see if there's a genuine conflict at play here between two characters who want to achieve opposite goals. Who are they? What do they want? What's their history together? How far are they willing to go to win? Start writing with these questions in mind, and your scenes are going to become much more dramatic, I promise. 2. Ask yourself what the conflict is really about. Remember, the hutch wasn't a hutch, the debt wasn't a debt, it was all about becoming a family. Giving the conflict a meaning beyond just the surface level fight is going to add more depth to your characters and to your story. 3. If you're writing for television or video games, or even just as a writing exercise in general, remember Dan Harmon's story circles, which focuses on characters, not events. Even if you end up not using story circles specifically, keep those key elements in mind. What do the characters want? What do they do to get it? What is the cost they pay for it? How do they learn from it? And that's it from me today. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you like this video, maybe think about subscribing or sharing with someone, or maybe even watching one of my other videos. It really does go a long way towards helping me make videos like this possible. If you've been here from day one, you're probably wondering, what the hell, this isn't about video games, and you're right. I'm gonna start making videos about movies and television. After all, I went to film school and I worked as a screenwriter for a number of years, so film's really more of my wheelhouse anyway. But don't worry, I'm still gonna cover stories and games. In fact, talking about story circles in this video makes me wonder if that might be part of the secret sauce that made a certain other game just so damn popular.